Welcome guys, tonight we descend gently, but firmly, into a place you've probably heard of but never had the full, deeply boring pleasure of visiting, the Greek underworld. Not the movie kind with leather armor and equi-screams, but the real ancient version, the one full of petty rules, questionable floor plans, and more red tape than a bureaucrat's toga. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, if you're listening from anywhere interesting, or even just your cozy bed, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where our sleepy little history club reaches. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You die, but not in an exciting way, more like you choke slightly on a pomegranate seed you didn't realize had a bitter edge. The world tilts, fades, you blink, and then darkness, but not scary darkness. This isn't some doom and gloom metal album cover. It's more dusty hallway at closing time, the kind of dimness where everything looks beige no matter what color it used to be. You stand upright somehow. There's no body, but you feel like you're you. A little foggy, like waking up in someone else's Netflix queue. The first thing you notice, the silence is not silent. There's a constant murmur, like soft shoes shuffling across linoleum, papers being slid, whispered complaints in very ancient dialects. Someone coughs into eternity. A short, bored-looking figure, wearing something between a toga and a bathrobe, gestures for you to move forward. Welcome to the Underworld waiting room. There are no flames, no howling, just long benches, infinite queues, and lots of other very confused souls pretending they're not looking at each other. One guy in a Corinthian helmet stares straight ahead. His ghostly spear is bent. A woman next to you mutters something about shouldn't have trusted the figs. You clutch something in your hand. It's a small obol, a coin placed under your tongue at burial. Good, that's your ticket forward. No coin, that's a longer story. You might be stuck loitering near the edge of existence like an unsaved draft email. But you're ready, sort of. Historians still argue whether the obol for Karen tradition was widespread or more of a poetic invention. What we do know, coins were often found in burials, tucked into mouths or hands, and the symbolism was crystal clear: pay the ferryman or wander lost. A sleepy attendant motions you toward a stone doorway that seems to shimmer with humidity, even though there's no sun, air, or sense of time. You shuffle forward, because what else are you going to do? Go back. No one speaks loudly here. Even if you tried, your voice would feel like it got caught in velvet. The hallway narrows. There's a low table. A very tall woman with two different colored eyes asks your name, then asks again because she says the first version did register. She stamps something on a clay tablet, hands it to a floating assistant who immediately drops it, sighs, picks it back up, and sends it spinning off down a chute. Great start. The floors aren't exactly solid, more like walking on compacted memories. You wonder if socks were a thing in the afterlife. Your feet feel damp, but only metaphorically. A bell rings, one long tone. Everyone stands a little straighter. The next phase is coming. And you realize this is all just to get in. No one talks about the line to death, only the end result. But the Greeks, ever lovers of drama and process, imagined even their afterlife with the slow precision of a government department run by ancient poets. And so, as you reach the edge of a wide chasm with a lazy moving river below, you spot a small dock, a boat that's either wooden or bone, you can't tell, and a man, if he is a man, leaning on a pole, rolling his eyes in your general direction. You've made it to the ferry queue. But that's the next chapter. For now, you look behind you. More souls are arriving. Some look bored, others confused. One guy appears to be muttering a legal appeal. Quirky fact, there's a fringe theory that the underworld's waiting period reflects ancient Greek court systems, slow, procedural, and oddly obsessed with written records. A literal afterlife DMV. A boy in a threadbare tunic sighs loudly as he's told to step aside for additional evaluation. You pretend not to stare, but part of you wonders, what is additional evaluation, and what happens if you fail? Probably more waiting, possibly another stamp. The woman ahead of you drops her obol and it rolls off into a crack. No one helps. Even in death, people respect cues and bad luck. Still, you inch forward. There's no real passage of time here, but you get the sense you've been standing for hours, maybe days. One soul, barely visible at the far end of the corridor, starts humming, softly, a funeral song in reverse. Like a lullaby for those who have finally stopped rushing. This isn't what you expected. No grand entrance, no dramatic speech. Just tired forms, half-formed memories, and an endless murmur of mild inconvenience. You are not special here, no one is. And in a strange way, that's comforting. You step forward, or rather you drift. Your feet seem to remember how to move, even though your body doesn't seem particularly interested in participating. The air, or something like it, grows thicker as you approach the river. The crowd funnels toward a narrow landing where a thin dock extends into what looks suspiciously like black ink. This is the River Styx, one of 5 rivers in the Greek underworld, actually, the most famous one. The one you probably expected to be fiery, loud, maybe even glowing ominously. But no, it's slow, thick, wide, and it smells faintly of old parchment and wet stone. You could imagine this as the world's most depressing canal if it weren't also technically the boundary between the land of the living and the dead. Karen the boatman stands still, or slouches. It's hard to tell with that many layers of shadow on his face. He looks exactly how you'd expect a centuries-old spectral ferry operator to look, hunched, cranky, and extremely over this shift. His beard seems to be made of dust. His robes flow even when there's no wind. And his boat, less a vessel, more a floating memory of transportation. He holds out a hand, you place your obol in it, and he inspects it as if he's thinking of rejecting it purely out of spite. Then finally, he nods and grunts, jerking his thumb toward the boat. You climb in, nearly tripping over an invisible step. It's surprisingly roomy, not comfortable, mind you, but roomy. You sit beside a man who smells like sandalwood and regret. He doesn't acknowledge you. A woman clutching a broken lyre sits across from you, lips moving without sound. The boat lurches. Historians still argue whether Karen's fare was always 1 coin, or if this was just the poetic minimum. Archaeological records show everything from silver drachmas to bronze tokens. What's consistent? The expectation of payment. Even the afterlife, it seems, has operating costs. You float forward. The river doesn't ripple, it doesn't lap, it absorbs. You can't see the bottom and you don't want to. You glance over the edge and swear the water shifts away from your gaze, shy or secretive. Karen doesn't speak, but he mutters under his breath now and then, like someone who's just remembered something annoying that happened in 500 BCE. And then, just as you're adjusting to the eerie calm, the boat jerks to one side. Karen's steering stick pokes something under the surface, hard. He growls and leans over. Floating Spartan armor again, he mumbles, more annoyed than alarmed. They always forget to remove it. It's true, Spartans were famously buried in full armor, which, when translated to the underworld, turns into a drifting metallic hazard. The helmet bobs up beside the boat briefly before sinking again with a faint glug. You pass under a low stone arch. Strange vines, if they're even plants, hang down like ropes. A crow perches on one and squawks, startling half the passengers. Someone drops their ghost purse. No one picks it up. You notice the boat's floor has carvings, old ones, etchings from other passengers, names, dates, prayers, crude stick figures with oddly muscular arms. You find yourself wondering what happens if you just jump out. Not that you'd try, but would you float, sink, swim? The idea of paddling through liquid memory is somehow more terrifying than death itself. A man behind you sneezes. Everyone jumps. Karen glowers. Keep your essence inside your vessel, he mutters. No one laughs. This is serious business. And yet it's also mundane, sleepy even. You feel yourself nodding off, which is odd since you're pretty sure you're already dead. But this boat ride has that same lullaby effect as long train journeys through foggy landscapes. In the distance you see a flicker of movement, other boats. No, fish, maybe. Then again, it could just be old dreams swimming by. They tend to cluster near the living boundary. They never make it past the midpoint. You pass a floating sign carved into obsidian. No refunds, no returns, all RIDES final. A charming touch. Quirky detail, some ancient Greeks believed that if you weren't buried properly, without the right rites or coin, you'd be stuck wandering the riverbanks for 100 years. Imagine camping forever with no firewood, and everyone's already told their stories 700 times. Karen lets out a long, weary sigh. Too many poets lately, he mutters. They all want to monologue mid-crossing. No one just sits quietly anymore. You stay quiet. Finally, the far shore creeps into view. It's not much to look at, just a bank of grey ash and a crooked path winding upward into the gloom. A sign, again, carved in obsidian. Someone in administration likes consistency, read. Les. Welcome to the threshold. Remain in line, no bards beyond this point. The boat thuds softly against the dock. Karen doesn't help you off. He just waits, palm open for the next soul's fare. You step onto the shore. The ground has give to it, like walking on spilled flour. A tall woman in something resembling a toga, but with inexplicable shoulder spikes checks your token, then waves you forward. She doesn't smile. You follow a lantern-lit tunnel where the walls shimmer like oil on water. The silence deepens. This, you realize, is the actual entrance. Everything before, just onboarding. You begin the ascent up a curved ramp that seems to go nowhere, flanked by giant statues. One of them leans slightly forward as if judging your posture. You straighten instinctively. Scholars still debate the layout of the Greek underworld. Was it imagined as layers, realms, interwoven territories? The literature contradicts itself constantly, but what remains consistent is the presence of boundaries. Gates, rivers, gates again. It was a place of thresholds endlessly crossed. As you crest the ramp, a new voice calls out. Step aside, canine on break. And sure enough, lounging beside a giant, rune-carved arch is Cerberus. The Hound of Hades. The great three-headed guardian of the dead. He's sleeping. One head snores, another nibbles absent-mindedly on a bone. The third watches you lazily, as if daring you to be interesting enough to chase. You are not. You are exactly the kind of soul who filled out their paperwork, brought the correct fare, and did not try to sneak a liar through inspection. Cerberus yawns. It echoes like distant thunder. A guide in grey murmurs, don't make eye contact, don't pet his union. You nod solemnly. The hound rolls over, taking up most of the path. A guard offers you a detour. You take it. You pass a small plaque that reads, Cerberus, Eternal Guardian, do not disturb, feeding at 6th toll. Someone has left a pile of ethereal tennis balls nearby, all of them untouched. And now, finally, beyond the beast, the boat, and the board attendants, the deeper layers of the underworld begin. The landscape opens up like a grey watercolor, vast fields, strange columns, distant shadows, and still that constant quiet, not silence, never silence, but the soft hum of a million forgotten footsteps trailing behind you. Welcome to the inner gates. And if you're wondering whether things get any clearer from here, no. They get more bureaucratic. The path curves gently, but endlessly like a spiral built by someone who loved mazes a little too much. Ahead of you, the terrain changes. No more riverbanks or dusty corridors. Now the ground feels like old carpet over stone, soft enough to tread without sound, firm enough to remind you it doesn't want footprints. As you walk, a strange warmth seeps in, not heat, but something like the memory of warmth. A cozy fire you sat near once, the smell of toasted barley, the flicker of a torchlight from some long-forgotten ritual. The air hums faintly, like a hallway in an office building no one's been in for decades. And then the gate. It rises before you, tall and flat and flanked by two statues. One of a woman holding a balanced scale, the other of a man with a scroll that never ends, winding down into the gravel. This is the Gate of Judgment. And just behind it sits the real highlight of tonight's journey, the Underworld's Eternal Review Board. 3 judges, no jury, no appeals. Your turn is called by a name you didn't realize you still remembered. You step through. The chamber inside is shaped like an amphitheater, with the seating reversed, judges above you, leaning on marble desks, you below on a small dais that somehow tilts slightly left. The three judges are waiting. Minos, who once ruled mighty Crete, now stares at you as if deciding whether you'd make a decent pot roast. Rhadamanthus, once famed for his justice, flips through a long scroll and occasionally adjusts his golden cuff. And Aeacus, the quietest of the trio, taps a stylus against the edge of his ledger, his eyes closed. Name, Minos asks, although they clearly already know it, it's procedural. You answer. Rhadamanthus squints at the scroll. Spartan schoolteacher, lived to 47, mild theft conviction, several late library returns. You try to explain about the library fines, but Aeacus waves a translucent hand. We don't care about the fines, we care about your essence, intent, soul rhythm. Soul rhythm, that sounds suspiciously unquantifiable. Here's the thing, most ancient Greeks didn't imagine judgment like a modern courtroom. It was more vibe-based. What kind of soul you carried. Not sins necessarily, but resonance. Were you brave, kind? Did your choices ripple outward or sink? Historians still argue whether this tripartite judging system evolved from myth or regional cult practices. But everyone agrees, Minos was the final say. If you got past him, you were probably fine. They ask you a series F questions, odd ones. Did you feed stray dogs? Were you patient with drunk uncles? How often did you lie for convenience? What were your last thoughts? You pause at the last one. Were you thinking about figs or your sandals? Rhadamanthus raises an eyebrow. Hesitation is not ideal. You begin to sweat, except you don't actually have skin anymore. It's more of a moral perspiration. A loud stamp echoes across the chamber. Aeacus sighs, assigned asphodel. A parchment rolls itself into a tight scroll and floats away on a tiny breeze. Minos looks at you with mild pity. Next. You're ushered off the dais. No fanfare, no good job. Just a small nudge from a silent attendant with wings that seem ornamental rather than functional. Asphodel. You remember the word from childhood stories. Not punishment, not reward, just the middle. The Greek afterlife had three main regions. Elysium, where heroes and philosophers had garden parties. Tartarus, where bad people and rebellious titans faced eternal inconvenience. And Asphodel Meadows, the soggy purgatory of the vaguely average. You're led through a narrow hallway lined with urns. Some whisper, one sneezes. Then finally, the room opens. And you see Cerberus. Again. Different hallway, same dog. Three heads, one massive, slumbering body curled around a broken column. One head lifts and blinks at you. You nod. He nods. There's a mutual understanding now. You are no threat. He is no guide. You both exist loosely in the same footnote. Go on, murmurs a spirit guide. He's between shifts. You step gingerly around the beast, careful not to make sudden movements. Not out of fear exactly, more out of respect for naps. And now at last you enter Asphodel. It stretches far beyond what your eyes can grasp. Rolling hills that don't roll much. Thin, gray grasses that shift without wind. People's souls wander or stand in small groups. No one speaks loudly. Conversations float like fallen leaves on a pond. Mostly memories, not dialogue. There's no sun, no moon. The light here is ambient, like walking inside a memory of a foggy morning. And you realize you're home, or at least the after version. Here's the fringe detail. Some ancient texts suggest that souls in Asphodel actually drank from the river Lethe before entering, forgetting who they were, becoming shadows of former selves. Other accounts say the forgetfulness comes gradually, like memory seepage. You feel it already. Not names or moments, but your favorite smells. Your childhood song, that one weird joke your uncle told that no one understood. They're still in your pocket, but faint. A woman near you hums a tune. No one responds. You pass a man who seems to be playing an invisible game of dice, alone. He smiles at his imaginary win. This isn't suffering. It's not even boredom. It's the absence of needing anything at all. You sit near a low ridge. The grass hums gently beneath you, as if remembering old festivals. Somewhere a flute plays, you're not sure if it's real. It strikes you then asphodel isn't meant to be stimulating. It's the soul's cooling off zone, the quiet room after the drama, the nap after a very long, very confusing lecture. A soul walks by with what might be a spectral cat draped over their shoulder. You can't tell if it's real or metaphorical, but it purrs as it passes. Comfort, it seems, still exists here. Elysium is overrated, murmurs a voice beside you. You turn to find a tall man in ancient robes, hair woven with tiny leaves. Too many speeches, he adds before wandering off. You lie back, the knot grass cushions your weight. You stare upward at the night sky, a swirling ceiling of pale light and distant shadows that don't quite resolve into stars. And for a while, maybe hours, maybe centuries, you rest. No striving, no proving. You don't even dream. Just the steady hum of the forgotten. You're not sure how long you've been lying there in asphodel. Time doesn't tick here, it seeps. There are no clocks, no schedules, no alarms. It's just one long, comfortable exhale of a place. Eventually you sit up, slowly, not because there's anything urgent, but because your knot muscles feel stiff in the way that dreams do. Someone nearby stands up at the same time, as if mimicking you. Souls mirror each other here. Maybe because memory is contagious, or maybe because boredom creates choreography. You stretch, though there's really nothing to stretch. Just habit. The hill you're on overlooks a wide plain dotted with identical stone benches, each occupied by one, maybe two souls. A few are having what looks like a conversation, but you realize they're just exchanging the same sentence back and forth, like a skipping record. You walk, your footfalls make no sound. The grass, if it is grass, parts politely and then forgets you were ever there. It's here, as you reach the edge of a pale stream that doesn't seem to flow, that you meet an unusual pair. A man and a woman. The man's head is mostly a skull, his eyes a soft, glowing ember of personality. The woman has transparent skin, behind which faint shadows move like ink dispersing in water. They're both smiling, in that way that old friends smile at shared confusion. "You're new," the man says. You nod. "Don't worry," says the woman. "Everyone forgets eventually. You'll learn how to forget better." That sounds ominous. They invite you to sit with them. You do. For a while you watch the stream together. It doesn't babble or rush. It sighs. The sound it makes is almost identical to wine through closed blinds, or your grandmother's breath just before she said something wise. "There are exits," the man says. You look at him startled. "Exits?" "Sort of," he replies. "Not for everyone, just paths." The woman adds, "But they're monitored. You need clearance, credentials." Credentials in death. You let that irony settle in. In fact, it's more than a joke, it's mythology. The Greek underworld was famously difficult to leave, not just because of geography or monsters, but because it was bound by rules. Endless, petty, tangled rules. The gods loved their systems, and no one loved enforcing those systems quite like Hades. Not the devilish figure modern pop culture would have you imagine. Hades wasn't evil, just organized, eternally, painfully organized. His palace sits far beyond asphodel. You can't see it yet, but you feel it, like the buzz of a distant fax machine from another floor. Rumors among the dead say it's made of cold obsidian and glows faintly with underutilized power. Historians still argue whether Hades was actively feared in ancient Greek culture or merely respected as inevitable. He wasn't flashy like Zeus or charming like Apollo. He was paperwork, but in the mythological sense. You decide to explore. The couple waves you off. Follow the whisper trail, the woman calls, but avoid the fields of regret. They smell like bad poetry. You begin walking again, this time uphill. And now the terrain shifts subtly. The fog here is thicker, the ground more uneven. The occasional soul passes you, eyes vacant or possibly full of meaning you can no longer interpret. It's hard to say. Eventually the path splits. One fork is lined with flickering torches, the flames cool and white. The other is darker but wider, the soil crunchy beneath your feet. You pick the wider path, because of course you do. After what feels like several very slow staircases made of compressed ash, you find yourself at a strange stone checkpoint. A sign hovers in the air. Restricted administration only. Trespassers will be sent to the badly INDEXED archives. There's no one around to stop you. So naturally, you trespass. Welcome to Hades' palace. Except it's not what you expected. It doesn't rise like a mountain or gleam like a godly fortress. It's built low to the ground, squat and sprawling like a university library annex no one uses. Its walls are made of smooth, soundproof stone, no windows, just thin columns spaced far apart and doorways that whisper when you pass them. You slip inside. The first room is massive, not grand, just big. The ceiling disappears into shadows. There are desks, countless desks. Each has a file cabinet beside it, and floating above each one is a nameplate, most in ancient Greek but some in other alphabets. Here's the kicker, most of them are empty. The desks, that is. The admin staff, it seems, are on eternal break, or reassigned or lost. On one desk, a sign reads, "Currently reviewing mortal requests for divine favors, back in 200 years." A quirky tidbit from mythology. Some myths mention that mortal heroes could appeal directly to Hades, by petition, by offering, or by sheer stubbornness. But these appeals were often delayed, sometimes by centuries. You can see why. You wander deeper. The air smells like ink, iron, and something faintly citrus, probably divine bureaucracy. And then you find the central office. At the far end of a corridor flanked by statues of judges, dreamers, and sleeping lions, a single door glows with cold blue light. You knock because politeness transcends death. Nothing happens. You knock again. The door swings open a millimeter, then creaks the rest of the way on its own. Inside, there's a massive desk. Behind it sits a figure in robes so black they reflect no light. A circlet, not a crown, rests on his head. Hades. He does not look up. He is reading. Several scrolls float around him, slowly rotating. They hum softly, like bees that took a vow of silence. He speaks without looking. Name. You give it, your voice sounds thin. Not on the schedule, he says. Why are you here? You hesitate, you could say curiosity. Confusion, bureaucratic AC. Silent, you settle on the simplest truth. I walked. He finally looks up. And that is unsettling. His eyes are not cruel, just tired, deeply, eternally tired, like a man who's read every book in a series and knows the ending still isn't worth it. No one walks here, he says, unless they want something. You feel the weight of that observation. I wanted to understand, you say, how it all works. He laughs, not mockingly, just a soft puff of breath. It doesn't. He gestures vaguely at the piles of forms behind him. This is all a formality. The dead don't need managing, but the gods need order, so we keep pretending there is one. You nod because that's all you can do. He waves you off gently, like dismissing a well-meaning but annoying intern. Go back to your section, he says. Asphodel is sufficient. You turn. Just before you reach the door, he adds, tell Cerberus I'm not signing off on overtime. You nod again, though you're not sure if the dog will care. Back outside, the hallway seems longer, dimmer. You wonder if the palace rearranged itself behind you like some divine version of musical chairs. As you retrace your steps, you realize something strange. Despite all the mystery, the rules, the endless fog of formality, there's a certain peace to it all. You might not understand the system, but at least it's consistent. And somehow, in a world where mortal life is chaos, the eternal bureaucracy of death feels relaxing. Back through the twisting, echoing corridors of Hades' palace you go, retracing your steps, or at least attempting to. The underworld has a way of rearranging itself behind your back, as if its very geography is built on indecision. That hallway that was once straight now slopes left. The statue that winked at you earlier now frowns. You pass a door labeled Lost Departments and consider going in, but a low growl from behind it reminds you that curiosity, while charming in mortals, is often deeply annoying to gods. Eventually, the corridor spits you out not where you began, but somewhere entirely new and yet unmistakably familiar. The air is still gray, still cool, still smelling faintly of incense and philosophical regret. You're in Tartarus. Not officially, mind you. You didn't sign any forms and no one gave you directions, but you can tell from the temperature drop and the faint echo of "oops," shouted from a very deep hole. The terrain here is rougher. Gone are the rolling fields and gently humming grasses of asphodel. Here, the ground is cracked and uneven. Black stones jut out of the soil at odd angles. They look like broken bones or really unfortunate landscaping choices. This is the place where the truly unfortunate or truly impressive souls end up. Not evil necessarily. The Greeks didn't quite do sin the way modern religions do. But Tartarus was for oath-breakers, betrayers of the gods, and the kinds of people who would bring a flute to a silent retreat and play it loudly. You walk carefully. The shadows are thicker here, and they move in weird ways, more like listening than shifting. You approach a cliff's edge and look down. Far below, figures move in slow, repetitive cycles. One man pushes a giant boulder up a steep incline. It nearly reaches the top, then rolls back down again. He sighs, begins again. Sisyphus. A bureaucratic punishment if ever there was one. Some say his crime was tricking the gods into letting him live longer. Others say he simply annoyed them with too many clever ideas. Either way, they gave him the spiritual equivalent of an unskippable loading screen forever. You watch him for a bit, there's a kind of rhythm to it. Up, down, push, sigh, repeat. It's oddly hypnotic, like the world's saddest metronome. Historians still argue whether Sisyphus was meant as a warning about pride, cleverness, or just bad timing. Some even believe his punishment reflects a very ancient anxiety, the fear of busywork without purpose. Down the path you find another pit. A different man reaches toward a tree branch, his fingers inches from ripe, glistening fruit. Every time he stretches, the branch lifts. Beneath his feet, a pool of water glistens. Every time he kneels to drink, the water recedes. Tantalus. He shifts, muttering something you can't quite hear, but it might be a grocery list or a bitter complaint, maybe both. You sit down on a cold rock and watch for a while. There's something soothing about the predictability of failure. In a weird way, these figures have found consistency. No decisions to make, no unknowns. Just loops. A voice beside you says, "First time." You turn to see a young man in an old tunic, lounging with his arms behind his head. He's got the casual demeanor of someone who knows he's not being judged, just observing. Kind of, you admit. He shrugs. Everyone winds up near here eventually. Tourists, wanderers, philosophers trying to understand eternal consequence. Are you one of them, you ask? He laughs. Nope, I work reception. NDS you a small, translucent brochure. It reads, Tartarus, a brief stroll through infinite punishment, MAPS temporarily unavailable. You glance back towards Sisyphus. The boulder is halfway up again. He's grunting now, adding sound effects for variety. So why keep it all running, you ask the receptionist. Why not just end it? He shrugs again. It's not about the ending, it's about the ritual. The pattern, the repetition is the punishment, sure, but also the comfort. You mull that over. Eternal punishment reframed as eternal predictability. How very human, or perhaps divine. You walk on. Eventually, you come to a large gate carved from what looks like basalt and brass. A sign reads, Authorized entries only. Tortured souls, divine visitors, or really confused ghosts. Beneath that, in smaller print, Do not feed the condemned. You must be in the third category. A hallway beyond it leads you past rows of empty cells. Some are not empty. A man with bird wings instead of arms glares at you. He's muttering something about having warned everyone about wax. You keep walking. Eventually, the halls open again into a massive chamber, and you realize you've entered a kind of common area. Not a pleasant one, but communal in design. There are stone benches, smoky torches, and a large table in the center covered in scrolls. Several shades, pale, translucent figures shuffle through the scrolls, matching names to punishments. Every so often, one sighs loudly and stamps something before handing it off to a black-robed courier. Here's the weird part. One scroll floats toward you. You catch it without thinking. It unrolls in your hands and displays your name. Below it, currently assigned observation only, no direct interference. You glance around, no one reacts. It's as if the scroll wanted you to know, but no one else really cares. You roll it back up and set it on the table. Quirky detail, according to a rarely cited Orphic myth, some souls could voluntarily visit Tartarus, not as punishment, but as witnesses. To learn, to observe, to absorb the deeper meanings of justice, irony, and misfortune. Apparently, that's you now. You sit at the bench and stare at a nearby pit. Inside, a man is yelling at a cloud that doesn't exist. His voice echoes and bounces until it's just sound without words. You lie back. Not because you're tired. Again, sleep isn't quite the same here, but because there's nothing else to do. And strangely, watching these doomed figures go through the same motions over and over again is calming. Not exciting, not inspiring, but calm. It's like background noise for the soul. Eventually, you rise from the ash-stained bench and dust yourself off. The dust immediately returns, of course. This is Tartarus. No one leaves clean. You glance once more at the pit, where the shouting man continues his tirade against the non-existent cloud. It echoes faintly, folding in on itself like a bad poem. You feel something between sympathy and a deep, lazy shrug. You move on. This time, the path takes you through a corridor flanked by two walls of bronze, each etched with thousands of names. Some you recognize from mythology, others from what you assume must be the lesser-known horror stories of ancient family dinners. At the far end stands another figure, tall, armored, and with a gaze like ice held under pressure. She doesn't introduce herself, she simply stares. Observation access only, you offer preemptively. She grunts in approval and steps aside. You walk through the archway she guarded and find yourself in a space that seems to expand with your breath. It's a circular plaza, ringed with tiered platforms. At each level, different punishments loop, some creative, some so mundane they loop back into torment. One soul endlessly folds an invisible blanket, only for it to disappear the moment it's complete. Another balances a tray of cups that constantly spill themselves. One unfortunate soul rewrites the same speech over and over, only to have it erased each time by a gust of non-existent wind. You notice that none of them scream, at least not loudly. It's mostly sighs, mutters, the occasional soft grumble. This is not a place of fire and brimstone. This is death by repetition. The Greek underworld was never about endless screaming, it was about endless sameness, the erosion of will through paperwork and absurdity. You sit again, this time on a stone that pulses faintly with heat, not warmth, heat. The difference is in how it lingers, how it warns. A tall man with 7 shadows walks by. He tips an invisible hat at you. You nod. You get the feeling he's done this greeting for centuries. A small child's voice somewhere behind you sings the same phrase on a loop. Hera doesn't like your gift. Hera doesn't like your gift. Over and over, like a cursed lullaby. You stand quickly and begin to walk again. At a crossroads, you find an old wooden sign jammed into the ground. It reads, "This way to Exit B, 4 approved souls and deity escorts only." Beneath it, carved more recently in shaky hand, "Or for the incredibly lost." You take that as a sign, literally. This path curves up, then down again, and eventually flattens into a strange bridge made of black glass. Beneath it, nothing, not blackness, not mist, just nothing, the kind of absence that hums like an unfinished thought. You walk faster. At the far end of the bridge, the terrain changes once more. The rocks soften into moss. The air loses its bitterness. There's even a faint floral smell, something like hyacinth mixed with old parchment. This is the border of Elysium. You pause, there's no guard, no gate, no official stamping booth, just a sensation that stepping forward will change things permanently. And then someone steps out from the other side. He's glowing, not dramatically, more like someone who's been moisturized with moonlight. His robe is stitched with gold thread, his sandals pristine. He's smiling, of course. They all are in Elysium. "Welcome," he says. "We don't get many visitors from Tartarus." "I took a wrong turn," you offer. He raises an eyebrow. "Did you?" You don't answer. Elysium, the Greek version of heaven, sort of. A paradise not for the faithful, but for the exceptional, heroes, poets, those favored by the gods, or depending on which source you believe, those lucky enough to know someone influential upstairs. Historians still argue whether Elysium was originally open to everyone or only to initiates of certain mystery cults. Some texts suggest there were layers within Elysium, one for basic goodness, another for reincarnated excellence, like a rewards program, but eternal. You step forward. The grass here feels real. The air tastes like honeyed almonds. A breeze brushes your face and whispers a language you almost understand. Souls here move slowly but with purpose. Some dance in elegant circles. Others recite poetry to groups of admiring shades. There's a man playing a double flute with 4 hands. You don't ask. A woman approaches you, offers you a cup made of starlight. You accept, sip. It tastes like something from your best memory, but you can't remember what that was anymore. Still, it soothes. You walk among the groves. There are fruit trees here, and they do not vanish when picked. One soul plucks a pomegranate, bites it, and laughs, not madly, just pleasantly. The underworld is bureaucratic. Elysium is curated. Someone designed this place. Each tree, each breeze, each sound is intentional. You overhear a discussion between 2 philosophers, one arguing about fate, the other about geometry. Neither seems to want to win. The conversation is the reward. You keep walking. There's a fountain here. At its center, a statue of Mnemosyne, goddess of memory. The water glows faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. You recognize it immediately. This is the river Lethe's counterpoint, Mnemosyne's spring. In some traditions, souls here retain their memories even through reincarnation. To drink from Lethe is to forget. To drink here is to remember. A soul near the fountain dips a hand into the water, murmurs a name, and smiles through tears. You sit beside the statue and listen. The water speaks, but only in images. You see flashes of your mortal life, a birthday, a slice of honey cake, a dog with 2 different colored eyes, a late-night walk, a fight you wish you'd handled better, a forgiveness you never gave. It's all still there, just tucked away. A figure joins you, elderly, gentle-eyed. He says nothing, just sits. Eventually you break the silence. Do they ever leave here? He smiles. Some do when they're ready. Some go back to life, others move deeper. Deeper. He nods toward the distant mountains, where the light turns soft and surreal. The Isles. Ah yes, the Isles of the Blessed. A place beyond even Elysium, reserved for souls reincarnated 3 times and judged heroic each time. It's the VIP lounge of paradise, a place so peaceful that even memory dissolves into serenity. You look toward the horizon. You don't feel ready, not yet. So you stay. You walk through an orchard of dreaming trees. Their leaves rustle in perfect meter. A woman recites Homer from memory. A man teaches a child to fish using a line made of moonlight. You find a quiet place to sit, again for now. There is no rush, no clocks. Only the distant, steady sound of the fountain of memory. And a breeze that smells like figs. The breeze carries soft music now, distant lyres plucked lazily, the sort of melody that doesn't demand attention but rewards it nonetheless. You sit among the orchard trees of Elysium, surrounded by souls who have mastered the art of peaceful existence. No ambition, no striving, just being. After a while you rise, not from restlessness exactly, more like the pull of a page you haven't yet turned. You nod at the old man beside the fountain. He nods back as if to say, yes, keep going. So you do. Elysium is vast but not chaotic. It has a layout of flow, perhaps divvy. Ni Feng Shui, the paths curve in perfect arcs, and every now and then you see a small structure, a marble gazebo, a vine-wrapped pergola, a bathhouse with fountains that hum in perfect harmony. It's all too perfect to be accidental. You pass by a chorus of dancers, not formal, not choreographed, just souls swaying together in a way that suggests joy practiced over lifetimes. One waves at you mid-twirl, you wave back. Eventually you reach a ridge overlooking what must be the farthest point of Elysium, or perhaps just the farthest you're allowed to go. Beyond it, soft golden mist hangs in the air. No distinct shapes, just suggestion of mountains, of islands, of something even more serene. You know without knowing that this is where the Isles of the Blessed lie, not a place you can visit casually. You need to earn that. 3 lifetimes of heroism, according to the myth, or maybe just an especially impressive resume. Historians still debate the exact requirements. Some say the Isles were a later invention, a kind of divine retcon for particularly beloved heroes. Others argue they were always part of the cosmology, a secret endgame for souls who outgrew even paradise. You sit on a warm stone near the ridge and let your mind drift. And drift it does, right into memory. Not just your own, but collective memory. Elysium is saturated with it. Every blade of grass hums with echoes of past lives. You pick one, a random hum. It opens like a door. You're in Thebes, a dusty plaza. A boy is learning to wrestle. His coach has a crooked nose and a kind voice. The sun is hot. There's laughter and dust and the smell of roasted lentils. Another memory hum, a banquet in Athens. Women in finely woven chitons laugh behind delicate fans. A poet recites a verse about longing so tender that the room falls still. Even the figs seem to listen. These aren't your memories, not directly, but here in this place memories are communal. They pass between souls like shared loaves of bread. You take another walk, following a gently curving aqueduct that seems to flow uphill. The water inside it sparkles faintly, like someone added glitter to a spring. It leads you to a small grove, where 4 figures sit playing a quiet game of dice with stones that glow when touched. They look up as you approach. One of them, a tall woman with an air of exhausted wisdom, tilts her head. "You're not one of us." "I'm just passing through," you say. She nods, "Then sit, rest, that's what we do here." You join them. The game has no clear rules, but the laughter is easy. The glowing stones change color based on mood. One turns deep blue when it's your turn. You roll it anyway. The woman chuckles. "You're good at not knowing what you're doing." "It's a skill," you say, and everyone nods as if you've quoted some ancient philosopher. Hours pass, or maybe they don't. Time here is soft, plush, like the armrest of an old chair in your childhood home. Eventually you rise again, you thank them. One hands you a small pouch filled with flower petals that don't seem to weigh anything. "For the road," she says. "If the road turns dark, just smell these, they remember the sun." You walk again. The next place you come to is quieter, if that's possible. A library or something close. Not shelves, but trees with scrolls hanging from their branches. Souls wander the grove, gently unrolling the parchment, reading silently, then hanging them back like wind chimes. You approach a tree and reach for a scroll. It reads, "The day Achilles wept." Not in battle, not on the field, but quietly, alone, in a grove like this one, remembering a friend whose laughter once broke his seriousness in 2. Another scroll. "The first olive press." A woman whose name never made it into song invents a method for extracting oil more efficiently. She shares it with her neighbors. They gift her cheese in return. And another. "The boy who repaired the god's mirror." No context, just a few lines about a child who polished something celestial until it shone again. You roll them gently back into place. This is what Elysium guards, not just greatness but tenderness, kindness too small for statues, moments that never made the myths. You take a scroll and carry it with you, just one. Eventually your path curves again, this time to a small amphitheater. Not grand, just stone benches and a raised platform. A few souls sit and listen while a figure recites stories. No drama, no theatrics, just words like water. You take a seat. The story is about Demeter. Not the part where she bargains for her daughter, but a quieter bit. A moment when she sat beneath a fig tree and confessed to the wind that she missed the smell of baking bread. The storyteller pauses, looks right at you. And you, they say softly, you carry the scent of curiosity. That's rare here. You say nothing, but you hold the pouch of petals tighter. Later, as the crowd drifts away, the storyteller approaches. They're not solid, not quite. Their edges shimmer like heat off stone. Not many come here the long way, they say. I didn't know I had a choice. You didn't, they reply, and that's exactly why you were allowed. You sit together in silence, a companionable stillness, they pooh. LL out a lyre and pluck a few lazy notes. This isn't the end, you know, they say. I know. There's more. You look toward the horizon. The golden mist still glows, a shimmer on the edge of imagination. I'm not ready for the Isles, you say. No one is, they reply. They just go when they forget why they were waiting. You laugh softly, so what now? They pluck another note. You walk, you rest, you remember. And so you do. You wake, if you can call it that, in the same grove where the storyteller left you. There is no sunrise in Elysium, no alarms to jolt you from your peace. Only a gentle pressure, like a forgotten promise nudging your shoulder. The scroll you carried is still beside you, its ends curled from the night's dew, if dew even exists in the afterlife. You gently roll it tighter and tuck it inside your tunic, unsure whether it's for safekeeping or sentiment, maybe both. There's a new path now, one you don't remember being there before. It winds softly through the orchard, under archways of flowering vines that bloom in slow motion. Their petals are thick and perfumed, not cloying but nostalgic. Each scent feels like a different childhood memory, the smell of clay after rain, the hint of honey on warm bread, the crisp cool of library pages. You walk, and the world hushes to make room for your thoughts. Eventually you arrive at a glade, open, circular, carpeted with wild thyme. In the center stands a man. His robes are loose, his hands calloused. He's balancing a bowl of water on one palm. His gaze flicks to you briefly, then returns to the bowl. You don't speak at first. He does. Sit, he says, gesturing with his free hand. There's enough silence for two. You sit, the thyme releases its scent. Bees buzz nearby, disinterested in you. Are you a soul, you ask? He chuckles, sometimes, today I'm a philosopher. You consider this, and tomorrow. Depends what the garden needs. It's not an answer, but it works. You sit for a while in silence. Eventually he says, you've been to Tartarus. You nod. And Elysium. Another nod. You're walking the borderlands. You blink, is that what this is? He smiles at the bowl of water. There's always a borderland, between sleep and waking, between memory and myth, between the stories we tell and the truths we forget. You stare into the bowl. The water is still but not stagnant. It's alive. He continues, do you know about the judges? You shake your head. He sets the bowl down gently on a mossy stone and turns toward you fully. The Greeks believed that after death, each soul was judged by three, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, each from different eras, different kings, different temperaments. He begins to draw 3 lines in the dirt. Minos was the tiebreaker, the one with final say. Rhadamanthus judged Eastern souls. Aeacus judged those from the West. You think back, you weren't judged. Or at least, you don't remember being judged. He reads your expression. Some souls skip the trial, not because they're pure, but because they're exceptions or accidents. Which one am I? He shrugs, not my place to say. A bee lands on his shoulder. He doesn't flinch. Why judges, you ask? Why not just one god making the call? He gestures at the glade, because balance requires contrast, and contrast requires conversation. He draws 3 circles now, overlapping. When you stand in the center of all three, when your life has touched every spectrum, justice, kindness, imperfection, you belong in the overlap. That's where wisdom grows. You look at the diagram, it's the simplest thing, and somehow it explains everything. Have you ever been judged, you ask? Constantly, he says, even here. You both laugh quietly. Later you walk alone again. The borderlands are subtle. The path now winds through ruins, not tragic ones, but worn by time and affection. Stone columns draped in ivy, murals faded from 1,000 sunrises. A turtle ambles past you, wearing a tiny laurel crown. You don't ask questions anymore. You enter a courtyard where souls debate around a fire that doesn't burn. They speak in a dozen languages, some forgotten in the world above, yet you understand every word. A woman is describing her death as a child in Delphi. A man counters with his second death after reincarnation failed to stick. Another recalls how he once watched Plato stub his toe and curse like a sailor. They laugh, you do too. Someone turns to you and asks, "And you, what's your moment?" You think hard. Then you say, "I once taught someone how to climb a tree. They were scared, but they laughed when they reached the top." The fire flares faintly. "That's a good one," someone says. You move on. You find a pond surrounded by willows, not lethe, not mnemosyne, just water, clear, unpretentious. A soul floats lazily on the surface, humming a lullaby about shipwrecks and starlight. You lie on the bank. Above there's no sky, just suggestion, stars that wink in and out like ideas half-formed. A woman sits beside you now. She says nothing, just stares at the pond. Eventually she murmurs, "I used to be angry for a long time." "What changed?" "I got tired," she says, "then I got curious." You nod. The wind shifts. It smells like wet marble and time. She adds, "The underworld is many things, a place of judgment, of forgetting, of memory, of bureaucracy, but it is also a mirror." A mirror. She points to the water. You look. Your reflection stares back, but it changes. Rapidly, your face at 5 years old, then 20, then 90, then someone else entirely, a man with wild hair, a woman with tired eyes, a child laughing with crooked teeth. You blink, the pond stills. "I don't remember all of them," you say. "No one does," she replies, "but the soul remembers enough." You sit there together for a while, letting the wind tug at your hair and the reeds. Finally she stands and walks away. You don't follow. Because something new is happening. A sound. Footsteps rhythmic, deliberate. You turn. 3 figures approach, tall, regal, familiar. The judges. Minus Rhadamanthus, Aeacus. Not glowing, not terrifying, just imposing, like lawyers with perfect memories. They say nothing at first. Minus gestures to a bench, you sit. Aeacus opens a scroll. It has your name. You wait for the questions, the reckoning. Instead, Rhadamanthus simply says, "What did you learn?" You pause, think. "I learned that forgetting isn't always loss. That routine can be peace. That justice is quieter than I thought. And that sometimes the waiting is the reward." They nod, each one in turn. Minus says, "We won't judge you today." You blink. "Then why are you here?" "To remind you that wandering is not the same as being lost." Then they vanish. No fanfare, no golden light. Just gone. You sit in the silence they leave behind. And suddenly, you know it's time to walk again. Not toward the aisles, not back to Asphodel, but deeper into the borderlands. Because there are still stories unfolding here. Still memories being passed like secret notes under desks. Still a place for someone like you. Someone who came to observe and ended up belonging. You walk deeper into the borderlands, where the paths start to curve like questions with no clear answers. The ground is soft here, almost spongy, and every step feels like walking through someone else's dream. You notice it smells faintly of beeswax and old parchment, the scent of stories being unrolled and whispered into the fabric of eternity. There are no signs now, no labeled gates, no statues offering cryptic advice, only space and suggestion and a sky that flickers like candlelight at the end of a long night. You find a worn trail that veers left and slightly upward. You follow it, not because you're sure, but because indecision itself feels sacred here. The path takes you to a clearing where a group of shades sits around a glowing circle etched into the earth. It pulses softly gold, then silver, then a pale blue that hums like the underside of a lullaby. An older woman with a nose like a bird's beak waves you over. "Come," she says, "we're rehearsing." "For what?" "For when someone finally asks us." She laughs and the others chuckle with her. You sit. The circle feels warm beneath you, as if the ground remembers sunlight. They take turns reciting strange things. One soul declares, "I was the last person to hold the scroll that burned in the Library of Alexandria." Another says, "I invented a way to preserve fish using grape skins, but nobody wrote it down." A younger soul whispers, "I once taught a Mycenaean child to braid her own hair. It's all so small and so precious." They look to you. You think for a long moment. Then say, "I once caught my grandfather lying about how many figs he ate, and I let him have the extra." The silence. Then the old woman says, "Good, that's the kind of story the world needs." You nod but feel unsure. She reads your hesitation. Big myths are made of little ones, we just forget the stitching. Someone hands you a cup of warm liquid. It tastes like barley tea and thunderstorm air. You stay a while, hours maybe, or years. You tell more stories, some from memory, some from somewhere deeper, below memory, where truths are kept safe by forgetfulness. Eventually, the group begins to fade, not all at once, but slowly, like a page being turned in a book you didn't realize had chapters. You walk again. This time the terrain flattens. Grass gives way to sand, then to cool stone. Columns appear, broken and majestic, like ancient rules that still stand even when no one follows them. You've reached the bureaucratic center of the afterlife again. But it's different now. You're not lost. You're expected. A figure waits by a doorway carved into obsidian. He wears robes the color of dusk, his face stern but not unkind. "You've circled through," he says. You nod, "Wasn't planning on it." "Few do, fewer still return." He beckons you forward. Inside it's lanterns flicker with soft blue fire. Desks made of stone stretch outward in perfect lines. Shades move between them with scrolls, notes, quills made of golden feathers. This is the archive. Not the judgment hall, not the fields of reward or punishment. This is where everything is remembered, and where some things are revised. The man hands you a scroll. It's blank. You look at him confused. He smiles barely. Some souls write their own records. "Am I allowed?" "You've already started," he says, and points at the scroll in your tunic, the one from the memory grove. You pull it out. Now it's longer. You unroll it carefully. Your name remains at the top. Below it, lines you didn't write, but that sound like things you would have said. Moments, recollections, jokes. A line that reads, "Fell asleep under a tree shaped like a question mark." Another, "Didn't understand most of what happened, but liked the smell of it." You smile. The man nods. "This is the record you carry," he says. "You can keep adding to it, or leave it here for others to read." You hesitate. He offers, "You can also read someone else's, just once." Your eyes light up. He leads you to a long, low table. Scrolls stretch across it like slumbering cats. You choose one at random. Unroll it. It begins, "I was once a girl who loved olives more than people." You laugh. The scroll continues with stories of travel, invention, quiet defiance, and a tragic encounter with a goat that refused to be milked. You read to the end. The final line reads, "And when I crossed over, I asked for a pen. You gently roll it up. The man says, most never read another soul's record, they're afraid. Afraid of what? That they'll see themselves in it. You nod slowly. A bell chimes somewhere, not a harsh sound, more like an invitation to tea. The man gestures again. Your record is yours, add to it or leave it as it is. What do you suggest? He chuckles, I'm just the archivist. You return to your desk, the scroll waits, the quill floats slightly above the stone. You write. I met the archivist, he laughed. Then pause. Then write. Today I saw a turtle in a laurel crown. He didn't need to explain himself. And again. I remembered something I never lived, and it felt like mine anyway. You don't know where this is going, but it feels right. Later, you stroll the archive's halls. There's a display shelf with records from mythical heroes, Achilles, Heracles, even Orpheus, whose scroll is mostly musical notation with scribbled apologies in the margins. And next to them, unnamed scrolls, souls who weren't famous but remembered, stories like, she gave her last honey cake to a stranger. Or, he listened without interrupting. These are the underworld's true treasures, not swords, not thrones, but empathy offered freely. You write again, and walk again. Outside, the sky is still flickering, still soft. The paths continue, but now you choose them, not because you know where they go, but because you no longer mind not knowing. The sky above continues its slow shift, flickering in that strange, quiet way only the underworld can manage, part celestial screensaver, part forgotten lullaby. You roll your scroll tightly and place it inside the fold of your tunic over your chest. Not for safekeeping, not for posterity, just for now. Just because it feels good to carry something that remembers you. You're still in the archive, but its edges have softened. The desks have thinned out into groves. Where once there were orderly shelves, now there are hammocks made from woven scrolls, and instead of the flickering lanterns, the trees glow with bioluminescent moss. You wander past a group of souls playing a quiet game of questions. One asks, what color was your favorite lie? Another responds, plum. Everyone nods as though that answer has explained everything. You move on. The floor here becomes softer again, moss and memory, leading to a long stone corridor. At first, it seems familiar. You recognize a statue you passed hours or days ago. But this time, there's music drifting down from the end of the hall. A gentle flute melody and singing. But not words, just the shape of melody, the syllables of meaning without grammar. It pulls you forward like gravity made of nostalgia. At the end of the corridor, you find a room filled with, well, it might be people, it might be gods, it might be both. They sit in a circle around a fire that doesn't burn, sipping from small clay cups and murmuring things that make the air shimmer. One of them gestures for you to join. You do without hesitation. They pass you a cup. The drink is warm, tastes like roasted figs, and the feeling of your name spoken by someone who remembers you. The person beside you speaks without looking your way. We're practicing forgetting. You blink, you mean remembering. They shake their head. No, forgetting properly, with kindness, with ceremony. You sip the drink again. I thought forgetting was accidental. They smile only when it's rushed. And then you realize this is a ritual. A formal forgetting. One by one, the others speak. They name things they're ready to release. I release the smell of the sea I never returned to. I release the argument I kept re-arguing in my head for 200 years. I release the name of someone I failed to love. Each offering is accepted silently, swallowed by the warm air and held somewhere deeper than regret. They turn to you. You hesitate. Then say, I release the need to understand everything. The air folds around the words, accepts them, you feel lighter. Another cup is passed to you, this one cooler, tinged with something sharp like rosemary or clarity. This one's for memory, says the soul beside you, to remember what matters. You sip. Suddenly you recall the smell of your mother's hair after rain, the exact laugh of a friend you lost too young, the color of the blanket you dragged everywhere as a child, and one moment, just one, when someone looked at you across a campfire and you both knew everything was fine just for a moment. The memories don't sting, not here, they shimmer, they glow for a moment then settle. Someone claps gently, the circle disperses, not like a meeting adjourned, more like the end of a nap. You rise with them. There's a hallway beyond the room, this one lined with long tapestries woven from hair, thread, and things unnamed. Each one a life or many lives. Scenes flash across them. A baby's hand reaching for sunlight, a soldier pausing to smell a flower, a baker kneading dough with tears on her cheeks. You recognize none of them, and yet you feel them all. You reach out and touch a tapestry. It hums softly under your fingers. "Careful," says a soft voice behind you. You turn. It's Clotho. You don't need an introduction, you know. One of the three fates. Not stern, not cruel, just tired, like someone who's been knitting the same scarf since before time and still isn't sure what it's for. She nods at the tapestry, that one's still being woven. Someone still alive. She shrugs, or someone not quite done. You pull your hand back. She points farther down the hall, yours is there. You follow her gesture, passing dozens of tapestries, some vibrant, some muted, some with whole sections unraveling. You find yours. It's shorter than the others, not in a sad way, just young. It pulses softly, not with color but with intention. You say, "Can I see the end?" Clotho shakes her head. The end is never part of the fabric. Why? Because it's not woven, it's released. You stare at the threads. "Can I change it?" Clotho raises an eyebrow. "Depends, are you dead?" You blink, "I don't know." She smiles. "Good, that means you're still listening." She walks away without another word, trailing thread behind her that vanishes as it falls. You stay for a while, watching your tapestry. You notice small scenes forming, the walk through Tartarus, the pond in the borderlands, the turtle with the laurel crown, the archivist's laugh. These are the moments being remembered by the thread, not your biggest achievements, not your worst failures, but your quietest truths. You walk on. Eventually the hallway opens into a space so vast it doesn't seem to end. Stars hang here, but close, low enough to touch if you're brave. They pulse with stories. You see constellations you've never heard of, the potter, the listener, the forgotten friend, each one anchored by souls who became more than their story. A gentle wind stirs, and then as softly as a sigh, a boat appears. Not sailed, not rowed, just present. A ferryman waits. Not Karen, someone older, or newer, maybe just different. He nods. "Ready?" he asks. "For what?" "Nothing dramatic," he says, "just a different view." You step into the boat. It rocks, then steadies. The stars adjust themselves to make way. As you drift, you pass memories, not yours this time, but humanity's. A child being told their first myth. A grandmother whispering a bedtime story about Hades. A boy staring up at the stars, trying to name them all before falling asleep. You realize something then. The underworld was never a place of endings. It's a place of perspective. Of shadows that teach us how to value the light. Of routines that make us question ambition. Of repetition that reveals the shape of the soul. The boat floats on. You don't know where you're going. But for the first time in a long time, you don't mind. The boat glides forward in that unhurried, dreamlike pace that defines the underworld. There is no sail, no oar, no obvious current. Just motion, steady and serene, as if the waters beneath you are responding not to gravity or wind, but memory. The stars overhead sway gently as you pass, shifting their constellations like curious onlookers, rearranging themselves to get a better view of your quiet journey. The ferryman hums a low tune, wordless, half melody, half breath. It's not unpleasant. It sounds like something you might have heard once in a dream you forgot before waking. You sit in silence, not because you've run out of questions, but because for once, questions feel unnecessary. The shore approaches gradually. It's not dramatic, just a subtle change in texture and color. The water darkens from soft silver to an amber gold, and the boat gently bumps against a sandbank that glitters faintly, as if it's been dusted with forgotten moments. The ferryman offers no goodbye. He simply tips his head, and the boat begins to recede the moment you step off, like a dream politely closing its door behind you. You look around. This place is different. It isn't Tartarus, nor Elysium, not the archives or the borderlands. It's a village. Or it used to be. Stone foundations half swallowed by earth, olive trees growing through abandoned columns, pieces of pottery tucked into the roots of fig trees, their painted figures worn into ghostly suggestions. There's no one here, yet it doesn't feel empty, it feels remembered. You walk the old path between what used to be homes. Chickens might have once pecked at this very spot. Children may have carved games into those flat stones by the fountain. The silence here is rich, full of echoes. And then you see her. Sitting beneath a tree whose trunk splits into three, a woman hums softly while stitching what looks like a sandal strap. She's not glowing, she doesn't float, she just is. You approach. She looks up and smiles, her hands never pausing. I remember you, she says. Have we met? In the way myths meet, she replies, across stories through symbols. You sit beside her. Who are you? Penelope, she says simply, but not the famous version, the quieter one, the one who waited before the story started, the one who kept waiting long after the songs stopped. You blink, I thought you waited for Odysseus. She shrugs, I waited for a lot of things, that's how it is sometimes. You wait for love, then for clarity, then for peace, and eventually for rest. She finishes the sandal and sets it beside a dozen others, all perfect, all unworn. Who are those for, you ask? Wanderers, she says, like you. You pick one up, the stitching is precise, the leather smells faintly of rosemary and beeswax. She continues, the underworld is full of movement, you wouldn't think it, but it is. Even the still ones, they shift, inside. You set the sandal down gently. She smiles again, you've wandered far, seen much. You nod, and yet, I still don't understand everything. That's the sign you've learned something, she says. You stay with her a while longer. She tells you stories, quiet ones. A neighbor who once sang to her olive trees to help them grow. A trick she used to keep the loaves from burning. The time she laughed so hard at a joke that she dropped her loom shuttle and never found it again. You realize these are the myths not told, the ones not grand enough for epic poetry, the ones that stitch a life together like those sandals. Before you leave, she gives you one. It will only carry you where you already know to go, she says. You thank her and walk again. Soon the path leads to a hill. At the top, a stone bench, a lone tree, and a figure standing still as marble. You approach cautiously. The figure turns, a man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing armor that hums faintly with light. He looks at you with eyes that have seen wars, gods, and possibly the moment the first story was told. You're early, he says. For what? He gestures toward the horizon, where land meets sky in a slow dissolve. For the question. You sit beside him on the bench. What question? He says nothing, just waits. You take a breath. Then, because it feels like the right thing to say, you ask. Was any of it real? He smiles faintly. All of it, he replies, and none of it, that's how memory works. You look at him closely. You're a god. I was, he says, or maybe still am. It depends on who's telling the story. Which one? Does it matter? You think, I guess not. He nods, good, then you're ready. For what? For the garden. You tilt your head. There's a garden. He stands. There's always a garden. You follow. The path winds down the hill, and just as he said, there's a garden. But not the lush, perfect kind. This one is wild, unruly, vines climbing over broken statues, herbs growing through the cracks of old temple steps, bees buzzing lazily, poppies swaying, a cat sleeping on a scroll. This is where stories settle, he says. After they're forgotten. No, he says, crouching to gently lift a dandelion from between. And 2 stones, after they've done their work. He places the flower on a flat rock, and the wind scatters its seeds like punctuation marks across the air. You walk through the garden slowly, taking it in. There's a tree with ribbons tied to its branches, each a different name, most faded. A fountain where voices occasionally whisper fragments of myths. A statue of a woman holding both a quill and a sword, her eyes closed in mid-thought. In one corner a table is set. No one sits there, but the food is fresh. Olives, bread, cheese, a bowl of figs. For who, you ask? He shrugs, anyone who remembers to be hungry. You sit at the table, you eat slowly. The bread is soft and warm, the olives sharp and briny, the cheese tangy with just a hint of thyme. This is what the underworld offers that no heaven can, context. You don't arrive here exalted, you arrive curious, confused, full of pieces, and slowly, gently they begin to fit. The god or man or whatever he is sits beside you. You're not dead, he says. I'm not. No, not yet. But I've seen the archives, Tartarus, Elysium. And you'll carry it with you. Not all who pass through the underworld are gone, some just needed the walk. You blink slowly. Then what happens now? He takes a fig and smiles. That's up to you. You sit with him a while longer, the taste of figs still on your tongue, the scent of thyme and damp stone curling through the air like smoke that forgot where it was going. The table remains quiet. No one else joins, but the plate's never empty. Somewhere a soft chime sounds, not a bell exactly, more like a spoon tapping the rim of a clay bowl. The god, if he is one, leans back and folds his arms behind his head. I should warn you, he says, most people don't get this far. Why not? They get caught in their own stories, in the way they think things are supposed to end. You nod slowly, looking out across the garden. The wind has picked up slightly, rustling the ribbons tied to the memory tree. A yellow one flutters loose, drifting gently down into the grass where it disappears without a sound. Is this the end, you ask? He grins, what did I just say? You laugh. He rises, come one last stop. You follow. The path narrows, vines lean in, brushing your arms. Somewhere in the underbrush a cricket tries a solo, then gives up. The ground shifts again, stone giving way to soft, damp soil. Ahead you see it, a small amphitheater carved into the hillside, only a few rows of stone benches, worn smooth by centuries of quiet sitting. At the center stands a single pedestal, no statue, just the stone, polished to a mirror-like finish on its top surface. He gestures for you to approach. You do. The surface reflects your face, not perfectly but gently. You don't look like a hero. You look like someone who's walked far, a little tired, a little sun-creased, but alive. And then slowly, the reflection changes. Your image begins to shimmer, shift. For a moment, you see yourself as a child, then as an old woman, then as a figure draped in shadow, someone who has told stories around a fire, someone who has listened in silence, someone who was once afraid and stepped forward anyway. You're seeing your echoes, the god says, not past lives, not future ones, just the ways you've been remembered. By whom you want to ask, but you already know. Everyone remembers you differently, some as a helper, some as a storm, some as a warm hand in a dark place. You step back. It's not always easy, he says, seeing yourself from the outside. It's not always accurate, you reply. He nods, pleased, exactly. You sit on one of the benches. The stone is cool. The air here has that rare stillness usually reserved for libraries and very old mountains. Others begin to arrive. Not from the garden, not from any path you can see. They just appear. Some you recognize, the archivist, the woman from the forgetting circle, the sandal maker. Even the turtle somehow wanders slowly across the lowest bench and settles like he owns the place. They take their seats without ceremony. And then they all look at you. The god speaks, voice softer now. This is your audience. For what? He smiles, your myth. You almost laugh. I'm not a myth, you say. Not yet. He steps aside. There's no podium, no script. Just you, standing in the center of a half-forgotten amphitheater in a quiet corner of the underworld, surrounded by echoes and dreamers, with nothing but your own breath and memory for guidance. You close your eyes, and you begin. You don't tell a grand epic. No dragons, no epic battles, no prophecies. You tell them about the time you laughed so hard your side hurt, and about the time you cried into your pillow quietly so no one would hear. You tell them about helping your friend move into their first apartment, about the letter you never sent, about the bread that rose too high and cracked in the oven but still tasted like home. They listen. They nod. Because they know. You end with this. I'm not the hero, but I walked the paths. The silence that follows is rich, gentle. And then they rise, one by one, and leave. Not as a dismissal. As a blessing. The god remains. He nods, you spoke well. You smile, it wasn't rehearsed. The best ones never are. He walks with you back through the garden. The sun, or whatever light guides this place, has begun to dim slightly. Not into night, just into a new kind of soft. You reach a gate. It wasn't there before. You look at him. Is this the end? He shrugs, another border. You peer through. It's not another realm. It's your world. The world above. But changed somehow, colors richer, edges softer. You see yourself at a desk, a cup of tea cooling beside you, the screen dimmed, the world quiet. You're writing, or maybe remembering. It's hard to tell the difference now. Will I forget, you ask? Not everything, he replies. But most. He considers only what you're ready to let go. You hesitate. And then you say, thank you. He smiles wide this time. We're always grateful when someone wanders well. You step through the gate. Not into noise, but into quiet with shape. A soft return. But before it closes, he calls out. Write it down. You turn. I already did, you say. And the gate seals itself with a whisper. You open your eyes. You're home. And for a moment, you remember everything. The judge's nod. The sandals stitching. The garden that hummed. The circle of souls around the fire. The archivist's laugh. The quiet rhythm of the boat. You sit down. The scroll is still in your hand. Not mythical. Just yours. You take a pen. You begin again. The pen glides across the page with that same quiet rhythm the underworld seemed to breathe in, slow, deliberate, entirely without hurry. You're writing not just to record, but to remember, and maybe also to feel again the textures of things you once passed through, fig-scented breezes, fireless torches, sandals that never touched soil. Each word carries more than ink. It carries echo. You pause, tapping the pen against the desk. Outside your window, the real world stretches, familiar yet altered. The light is soft like late afternoon, though no clocks confirm it. You can hear the buzz of distant cars, a bird somewhere complaining about a squirrel, the low hum of someone's TV through the wall, but all of it is wrapped in a strange hush. The kind that says, something has been completed or maybe begun. On the desk sits the scroll. Unwound slightly now, its edges curled, its fibers warm to the touch as if it hasn't quite adjusted to the air of the living. You touch it gently, as one might touch a beloved friend newly returned from a long voyage. You consider sealing it away, but something stops you. Instead, you leave it unrolled, like a map whose final country has yet to be drawn. You go for a walk, not because you're restless, but because your body feels like it needs to remember motion. Every step on the pavement feels impossibly loud. The leaves are greener than you remember. The scent of jasmine from a nearby balcony nearly makes you weep. The underworld taught you stillness, but the world above insists on color. And sound. A child bikes past you wearing a cardboard crown, singing a nonsense song with such conviction it may as well be scripture. You smile. You want to write that down later. You return home as the sky turns a deep lavender. You don't turn on the lights. You sit in the dim and let your eyes adjust, remembering the flickering torches of asphodel and the soft, shifting glow above the garden. You remember the God's words, write it down. So you do. You begin a new section in your journal, not a retelling but a translation. You describe what silence feels like in Elysium, what it smells like where the judges gather. You describe the archivist's grin, the turtle's slow blink, the sound of someone releasing a memory so old it no longer hurts. You stop only when your hand cramps. Then you rest. Sleep comes quickly, but not because you're tired, because you've been welcomed into rest, as if the underworld itself has granted you permission. And in sleep you dream, not of fire or monsters or three-headed dogs, but of soft paths beneath your feet and scrolls that write themselves as you walk. You wake slowly, the way you did in the grove, the memory of figs still warm in your mouth. You dress, you stretch, and you return to the page. The scroll is still there, but something's changed. New lines have appeared. You didn't write them, but you know them. I have walked the borderlands and returned with quiet in my bones. I have forgotten what I needed to, and remembered what remembered me. I know now the underworld is not punishment, it's perspective. You sit with those lines for a long time. Then a knock at your door. Strange. You open it. No one's there. Just a sandal. One of Penelope's, tied loosely with red thread. You pick it up. It fits. And though only one sandal sits in her hand, your other foot feels strangely balanced, as if somewhere, perhaps in that space between spaces, the other shoe waits for you. You close the door, and that's when you notice. The shadows in your apartment fall at impossible angles. You blink. The wall next to your bookshelf now holds a faint doorway, not a real door, just the suggestion of one. The kind you could step through if you believed it was meant for you. You touch it. Warm stone. The scent of time and old paper floods your senses. You step back. Not out of fear. Out of respect. Some doors are meant for later. You turn back to your desk. And again you write. This time not just your own story, but fragments of the others. You begin with, there was a woman who gave away her best olive oil because she knew someone needed it more. You continue with, there was a man who never spoke above a whisper and yet was always heard. Then, there was a shade who invented games no one played except the gods. You write until you feel the underworld watching, not critically, but with curiosity. You remember the ritual of forgetting and how generous it felt. You whisper aloud, I release the need to have it all make sense. And suddenly, your window shows more stars than the night can possibly contain. Somewhere in the distance, a familiar boat rocks gently on water that isn't quite real, but isn't quite gone. You take your scroll. You tie it shut with a strand of your own hair like a promise. And you leave it there on the desk. Because maybe someone will read it. Or maybe they won't. Maybe it will find its way back to the archive. Or become part of a ribbon on a tree. You don't need to know. You walk outside again. The sky above is the color of sleep. The stars impossibly close. And with each step, you remember just enough to keep going. Outside, the air is different now, Still familiar, still yours, but changed, as though every breeze carries a trace of the underworld scent, not sulfur or smoke, something subtler, crushed laurel leaves, ancient parchment, the soft tang of forgotten incense. The city around you seems to blink in slow motion, and for a moment everything shimmers. The streetlights have halos. The trees rustle like they're whispering names. You walk, not with purpose exactly, but with receptiveness. Each step forward is less about reaching somewhere and more about allowing something to arrive, and the world, in return, seems to be responding. At the corner bakery, the woman behind the counter hands you a loaf of bread you didn't order. Warm, wrapped in paper, she doesn't charge you, just says, "You look like you've had a long journey." You smile. You accept. As you walk away, you swear you hear her say, "Tell Hermes hello." You keep walking. The neighborhood looks the same, but your eyes catch more than before. On a telephone pole, there's a sticker with a drawing of Cerberus, but each head is yawning. A chalk doodle on the sidewalk depicts a turtle wearing laurels. The graffiti on the alley wall says, in looping cursive, "Memory is a muscle." You turn onto a quiet street, one you've never taken before. And there it is. A garden. Not Penelope's. This one is urban, wedged between two apartment buildings. An accidental Eden where someone planted mint beside an AC unit, and now the place has erupted with herbs and vines and small flowers that refuse to follow schedules. You step inside. There's no gate. You sit on an overturned milk crate. It feels like a throne. You unwrap the bread. Still warm, studded with olives. The first bite makes your eyes sting, but not because it's spicy. You eat slowly. There's no rush. And then something moves behind the marigolds. A figure steps out. You expect another god. But it's just a man. Middle-aged, kind eyes, a bit of a gut. He's holding a scroll. "Hey," he says. You nod. He sits beside you. Opens the scroll. "I've been trying to write this one for a while," he says. You wait. He reads a line. "Once there was a boy who believed the stars had names and spent every night trying to learn them all." You smile. He looks at you. "What do you think?" "I think that's a good place to start." He relaxes, eats a fig from his pocket, offers you one. You both chew in silence, like monks on lunch break. Eventually he rises. "Thanks," he says. "For what?" "For not interrupting." He leaves, doesn't disappear, just walks away, slipping around the corner like a shadow that politely excused itself. You sit there for a while longer. Then someone else enters the garden. A child this time, maybe 6. She walks directly up to you. "Are you the story keeper?" she asks. You pause. Then say, "I might be." She hands you a small object. A stone smooth and flat, painted with a strange pattern, part sun, part spiral, part turtle. You turn it over in your palm. "Where do you get this?" She shrugs. "I made it in art class. It's for remembering." She runs off before you can reply. You pocket the stone. It feels significant. Later back home, you place it beside your scroll. And for the first time, you open the scroll not to write, but to listen. The lines hum. Softly. Then words rise. There are some stories that don't want to be told, they want to be tended. You nod. You write nothing that night. You simply sit with the scroll. And think. You remember the Underworld's quietest lesson: not everything needs to be shared. Some stories are seeds, not fruit. They need darkness, time, silence. Eventually, you light a candle. And in its glow, you see movement in the mirror across the room. A figure. Your reflection, of course. But behind it, the turtle, wearing a tiny messenger bag. It nods at you solemnly, then vanishes. You laugh, a real one this time. sharp and delighted and utterly unprovoked. You whisper, you again. The candle flickers. Outside, someone is playing music, soft jazz or maybe a half-remembered lullaby. You walk to the window. You look up. The stars don't form any known constellations, but they do seem to be blinking in a rhythm. You think you recognize the pattern. 3 short, 2 long, 1 pause. Then again, it hits you. It's not Morse code. It's a heartbeat. The underworld's still pulsing, still watching, still offering its slow, strange kindness. You say, I remember you. And for a moment you think you hear it answer, we remember you too. The next morning arrives not with urgency, but with gentleness. Light creeps across your floor like an old cat, slow, deliberate, disinterested in your schedule. You wake easily without an alarm. There's no jolt, no confusion, just breath and warmth and the residual weight of memory not quite settled. Your scroll sits on your desk unchanged. Or so it appears. But when you touch it, it hums faintly, not from the material, but from the space around it, as if it's warmed by proximity to attention. You unwrap it again, not to write, not yet. This time you ask it something. What have I missed? The parchment crinkles slightly, you imagine it sighing. Then new lines unfurl at the bottom like vines. You saw Tartarus, you saw Elysium, but you never asked who cleans the floors. That line stops you. It's true. You walked through palaces of judgment, archives of fate, sunless gardens with myth-stricken ghosts, and never once thought about the custodians of eternity, who oils the hinges on Persephone's seasonal doors, who sharpens the reed pens of the scribe shades, who gathers the poppy petals after they've blown loose in asphodel. You dress quickly this time. Something's calling. You return to the urban garden. It looks unchanged, still wild, still fragrant, still humming with quiet rebellion. But now there's a path where none was before, a line of flat river stones etched with tiny, almost comical turtle footprints. You follow it. The trail leads behind the buildings, through a narrow alley filled with laundry lines and rooftop stairwells, and then suddenly, impossibly, into a dark archway nestled between dumpsters. It shouldn't be there. It is. You duck beneath, and find yourself in a hallway. Stone again. Cool. Carved with sigils, not grand inscriptions, just doodles etched by bored hands over centuries. A snake chasing its tail, a fish with a crown, the word meh in ancient Attic Greek. There's a soft scraping ahead. You follow it. The corridor opens into a vast, dimly lit room. This is not a palace, it's not a hall of heroes. It's a maintenance chamber. Buckets, mops, brooms carved from laurel branches, scrolls stacked beside feather dusters, a single shade in a clay-stained smock scrubbing a bench with the intensity of a philosopher. He doesn't look up. You found the service wing, he says. You blink, I didn't mean to intrude. You didn't, he replies, pausing only to rinse his rag. We leave the door open on purpose. You step closer, what is this place? He sighs, tired but not unkind. The underworld has its pomp, its judges, its gates, but someone has to pick up the glitter after the festivals, someone has to unstuck the jammed gates of Lethe. He wrings out his rag. That someone is me, and others we rotate. Do you ever rest? He finally looks at you. Rest is not the absence of duty, it's doing what needs doing at a pace that doesn't wound you. You let that settle. He gestures at the wall. There are hooks lined with tiny bronze nameplates, each etched with a different mundane responsibility. Echo Chamber Acoustics. Crumb Patrol Elysium. Reweaving asphodel roots. You ask, is this sacred? He shrugs, is bread sacred? You think of the loaf you ate in the garden. Yes, you say. He smiles. There's your answer. You ask if you can help. He hands you a brush. Start on the benches. Ghost moss gets stubborn this time of year. You scrub. At first awkwardly, then with rhythm. As you work, the shade speaks. There's a myth, he says, that the underworld was created all at once. Big bang of gloom and structure. False. He dunks his rag. It grew like a coral reef, layer by layer, regret by memory, and it still grows. You pause, you mean it's alive. He raises an eyebrow, what else would it be? You look around. There are pipes, vents, vines that move almost imperceptibly when you're not watching. The place feels organismal. Do you like it here, you ask? He nods. More than the surface. People here don't pretend they'll live forever. It makes them easier to talk to. You return to your scrubbing. By the third bench, your hands hurt. By the fifth, your mind feels clearer. It's like each stroke of the brush scrapes away something mental, too. A petty memory, a half-finished argument, a joke you never should have made. You let them fall like ghost dust into your bucket. Later, when your arms are tired and your knees ache, the shade says, you can stop. You straighten slowly. The benches gleam faintly. The moss has receded. The room hums. Thank you, he says. You're welcome. You think he'll vanish. He doesn't. He hands you something wrapped in cloth. You open it. A key. Not large, not gold. Ironed, worn, warm. What's this? He shrugs, might open something, might not. You pocket it, can I come back? He grins, you already are. And just like that, the room dims. You blink. And you're home. Standing in your kitchen, holding a damp rag in one hand. Your sink is full of dishes. You stare. Then smile. You wash them. Each plate with care. You dry them slowly. You hum. Later, you sit by your scroll. It accepts your presence with a shimmer. You write a single line. Even the underworld needs janitors. You laugh, and then write. I cleaned a bench, and in doing so found myself. The scroll curls slightly at the edges like it's pleased, as if the parchment itself recognizes the value of a well-cleaned bench. You set it aside, careful not to disturb its calm. Outside your window, the world is moving, slow cars, wind-blown leaves, a dog barking at nothing in particular, and yet you feel still. Not frozen. Balanced. There's a knock. Soft, almost shy. You open the door. It's no one. But something has been left behind, a satchel, faded leather, brass buckle, a name tag stitched in wool thread that reads simply, Messenger. You hesitate, then take it inside. The bag is heavier than it looks, but not uncomfortably so. It has the weight of importance, not burden. Inside you find three things. A folded map with no markings. A bundle of dried bay leaves, tied with a blue ribbon. A note that reads, use these when the stories get loud. You smile. You don't know who left it, but the turtle comes to mind. That night your dreams return, but differently now. They no longer unspool like random reels of your subconscious. They feel organized, curated, almost scheduled. You stand in a field, but the field shifts like a slide carousel. One blink and it's Elysium. Another and you're back in the archive, seated between scroll shelves. A third and you're in the amphitheater again, empty now, except for a chair with your name carved into it. No one's forcing you to sit. You choose to. A voice speaks, not aloud but inside your thoughts. It says, begin the second scroll. You wake with the phrase still echoing. It's barely dawn. The first scroll is still on your desk, glowing faintly in the quiet light. You touch it once like a goodbye, then gently roll it and wrap it in linen. You place it inside the satchel, where it nestles beside the bay leaves like it always belonged. Then you reach for a blank scroll. The second. Your hand hovers. But before you begin, you go outside. The garden down the street is waiting, of course. But today, you turn in the opposite direction. A street you've never walked before. And soon, you're somewhere new. It's still the city, still asphalt and pigeons and mailboxes dented from years of subtle rebellion. But here, a different quiet lives. You find a bench. Not mossy, not ancient. Just metal painted blue, a little chipped. You sit. Someone joins you. Not a shade, a real person. Wearing headphones, sipping something from a paper cup. They glance at you. Nod. Say nothing. That's enough. After a while they leave. You walk again. This time into a bookstore. It smells like cinnamon and wet pages. You don't look for anything specific. The stories find you. A title catches your eye. The Lesser Gods of Forgotten Cities. You flip it open. There's a passage highlighted by a previous reader. Even minor deities have temples, even silence has rituals. You close the book. You don't buy it. Some things aren't meant to be owned. Back home, you finally touch your pen to the second scroll. And you write. Day one, the underworld didn't end, it just changed neighborhoods. The line feels right. Then another. Today I watched a cloud shape itself into a dog and disappear. I think it was Cerberus on his day off. You laugh, you write more. As you write, a soft breeze moves through your apartment. It smells faintly of crushed laurel. You don't look for the source. You know. Over the next few days, things begin to shift. Not dramatically. Not with thunder. Just gently. You find yourself listening more. To strangers on the bus. To pigeons arguing outside your window. To the way your tea cools like it's whispering a farewell. You meet someone at the market who looks at you and says, "You remind me of someone I met in a dream." You don't answer. You just nod. Because it might have been true. You start carrying the satchel with you. Not to make a point. Because you might need it. One evening, as twilight settles into its velvet phase, you find yourself standing in front of a statue you've passed 100 times before. But tonight, you notice something new. The inscription at its base reads, "To the one who remembers." You sit beneath it. And you remember. Not just the great things. The quiet ones. The bench in the archive. The archivist's worn hands. The fig that tasted like forgiveness. The child's painted stone. The way you once worried whether your story mattered, and how the underworld taught you it already had. The scroll is still blank in your lap. And you realize it's waiting not for answers, but for noticing. So you write, "Tonight I saw a star fall and heard it apologize on the way down." And later, the underworld is not beneath us, it's beside us. It lives in places where silence is allowed to speak. You stay out until the moon decides you've been still long enough. Then you walk home. The satchel feels lighter now. Not because you've lost anything, but because you've made room. You wake with a word in your mouth that isn't yours. Mnemosyne. You whisper it like a password. It tastes like river water and marbled columns and honey wine left out overnight. You don't remember dreaming, but you remember the sensation of being watched, not with menace, but with deep, ancient attention. The kind of gaze that only memory itself could possess, like your own past staring back at you through the surface of a still pool. Mnemosyne, the tightness of memory, mother of the muses. You write her name at the top of the scroll. Then you write, "Today, I was remembered by memory herself." And beneath that, she wore no crown, she carried no scroll. She simply pointed at me and said, "Yes, you're still here." You breathe. Today is not about the underworld, you realize. Not fully. Today is about the thin line between what's remembered and what's forgotten. You leave the house with no destination in mind. Just the scroll in your satchel and the name Namasani pulsing in your thoughts like a low drumbeat. The streets greet you like old friends you haven't called in too long. A breeze lifts your collar, a pigeon struts across your path with the arrogance of royalty. Someone's music leaks from a window, an old jazz record, cracked and slow. You walk until you find yourself in a park. Not wild like Penelope's garden, not curated like the one with the turtle tracks. Just a city park with gravel paths, a duck pond, and a playground that creaks like it remembers better days. You sit on a swing. Not to swing, just to be held. And that's when she arrives. You don't see her come. She's just there. A woman older than time, or maybe younger than dawn. Wearing a grey cloak, barefoot on the mulch, eyes the color of first light. She smiles and says, "You've been collecting stories." You nod. She sits on the swing beside you, doesn't move, just watches the pond. "You've been doing well," she says, "but you've forgotten something." You brace yourself. Your own name. You blink, "I remember my name." She shakes her head. "No, not the one you use at cafes and in emails. The old name, the one you answered to when silence first learned how to whisper." You swallow. "Is that even real?" She shrugs. "Everything that's remembered is real, for as long as it's remembered." Then what happens when it's not? She finally swings. Not high, just enough. Then it becomes possibility. You look at her. "Are you Namasani?" "I'm not here to be identified," she replies. "But yes." You want to ask more. But she hands you something. A comb. Wooden, smooth, dark with age. "Use this," she says, "when the stories snarl." You nod. You felt that before, words tangling like hair, impossible to untie. She rises. You think she'll vanish. But instead she walks to the duck pond, removes her cloak, and wades in fully clothed. She begins to hum. And every duck swims closer. You laugh, you can't help it. When you look away, just for a moment, she's gone. You walk home differently now. Not faster, not slower. Just more present. You write in your scroll. "Today I met memory. She was barefoot and humming and didn't need me to believe her." Then another line. "We fear forgetting, but sometimes forgetting is just resting." Later that evening, you decide to visit the archive again. You know the way now. Through the mirror. Through the rhythm of breaths. Through the way your fingertips brush the scroll just so. And there it is. That endless hall. Scrolls stacked to the sky, shadows moving with purpose, ladders that climb into the concept of before. You're greeted by someone new. Not the same archivist as before. This one is younger. Or maybe just less tired. They wear gloves made of paper. And a belt lined with tiny bells. They bow. "You've returned," they say. "I'm still writing," you reply. "We noticed." You walk together in silence. Eventually they say, "Would you like to see your shelf?" You stop. "My shelf." Everyone has one, even if they only ever write one story. You follow them to a narrow staircase carved into the wall itself. It's steep, but not dangerous. At the top, a landing. And a single shelf. About shoulder height. Your name, not the cafe one, is etched in the wood. You don't remember giving it. But it feels right. 3 scrolls rest there. One you recognize, your first. One you're still writing. And one you haven't begun. You touch the third gently. It's warm. You leave it for now. "Why 3, you ask. The archivist shrugs. "We don't know, it's just always 3. You descend slowly. Back in the hole, someone is reading aloud. A group of shades listen, heads tilted. The story is about a river that learned to speak. You sit and listen too. And when the story ends, you all exhale together like a choir of silence. Before you leave, the archivist hands you a tiny bottle. Inside is a single drop of ink. For when your pen runs dry, they say. You return home. The satchel now holds the second scroll, a painted stone, a key, a wooden comb, a bundle of bay leaves, a bottle of ink. You think to yourself, this is beginning to look like a spell kit. You don't laugh. You just nod. Because it might be. You sit at your desk with the satchel unpacked before you like a ritual laid bare. Each item, now familiar, carries a texture richer than its surface. The stone hums faintly, warm from touch. The key, when placed on the windowsill, catches sunlight in a way that throws unfamiliar shadows. The bay leaves, though dry, still smell like ancient kitchens and prayers whispered through mortar and pestle. You lay them out in a quiet semicircle around the second scroll. The comb, freshly dusted, rests atop the open parchment like a quill's patient cousin, and beside them all, the ink, just one drop, suspended like a captured moment as if it refuses to age. You stare at the scroll. Then write. Today I remembered that memory has siblings, forgetting, retelling, and dreaming. The ink dries instantly, like it had been waiting for that sentence all along. You close your eyes. Let the room fall away. And once again you are between. Not dreaming, not fully awake. A place built out of breath and heartbeat. The smell of rain before it starts. You find yourself seated in a circle. No torches, no grand chairs, just sand beneath your fingers and a soft ring of cushions where shades, gods, and echoes gather. They do not speak, but they listen. Because now it's your turn to tell. Not just to write, to speak aloud what you've learned. Your voice comes gently without rehearsed inflection. You begin with a name, your true one, not syllables but meaning, the essence of how you were once called in a dream before your first breath. Then you tell them about the swing, the ducks, the woman humming in a pond. You tell them about bread given freely, benches scrubbed with devotion, sandals that found their way to your door. You speak of not knowing what happens next, and how that's the most sacred space of all. Someone chuckles. Someone sighs. The guard with the fig returns, sitting cross-legged with a bite already missing from his snack. He nods. Continue, he says. So you do. You describe the memory archive, the ink drop, the shelves that hold both promise and patience. You describe the second scroll and how it waits not for inspiration, but observation. How the real stories aren't chased, they're noticed. A silence follows. Then an old shade with a hunched back and golden sandals says, "Do you know about the eighth gate?" The circle stills. You shake your head. It's not on any map, he says, because it moves. It shows up for those who don't ask where it is. You smile, that sounds about right. It appears, he continues, when someone's story is no longer being written, but is still being lived. You nod slowly. Where does it go, you ask? The shade shrugs, depends who walks through. You feel it then. Not fear, not even curiosity, just readiness. You thank the circle. You return. To yourself, to your desk, to your satchel. Only now there's a new item inside. You didn't put it there. It's a smooth black stone, flat, warm, etched with the number 8. You pick it up. It doesn't buzz or shimmer. It just is. You turn it over. Carved beneath in nearly invisible ink, tell it even if no one's listening. You write that on your scroll. Then you add, the eighth gate is not found, it is grown. You spend the rest of the day quietly. You walk through your city with eyes softened by myth. You see echoes in bus stops and park benches. The gods are among you, but not how the epics claimed. They walk dogs. They repair bicycles. They argue over crossword clues in diners at midnight. You pass a laundromat. Inside, an old man is carefully folding a t-shirt. You recognize him. He was one of the judges. He glances up and winks. You walk on. In a bookstore, a woman drops a stack of books. You help her gather them, she thanks you with a smile so familiar your heart stutters. You ask, have we met? Only in the garden, she replies. You don't press. At home, you light a candle. The flame flickers sideways as if bowing. You write. The borders between worlds are more like gauze than gates. And later, I no longer fear the silence, I've met its archivist. That night the dream returns. But you're not in the underworld. You're building one. From clay, from breath, from tiny stories left behind on sidewalks and grocery lists, and text messages never sent. Each story becomes a room. Each memory a torch. Each forgiveness a key. You wake. The black stone is warm in your palm. Outside, the city is already alive. But you remain still for a moment longer. Listening. Somewhere beneath the sound of a delivery truck, and the hiss of someone frying breakfast, and the low murmur of distant traffic, you hear it. A door. Opening. Just for a moment. Then closing. Softly. You pick up your pen. And write. I am no longer visiting, I am part of it now. You wake before the light. It's the kind of early where the sky isn't even pretending to be day yet, just a dull slate, soft and holding its breath. There's a hush over the world, like the city itself is curled beneath a blanket, unwilling to stir. And in this stillness, you feel something stirring inside you instead. Not anxiety, not fear, just urgency without rush. You rise quietly, moving through your apartment like it's a chapel. You light no lamps. You open no screens. You dress in layers that feel like armor woven from familiarity, your softest hoodie, your threadbare socks, the scarf that smells like last October. You pack your satchel, not because you've decided to go anywhere, but because it feels like it's time. Scroll ink comb stone bay leaves key. And now the black stone marked with the number 8. Each object settles into place like a piece of a quiet ritual you've been performing without realizing. You don't know what you're preparing for, only that it matters. You step into the morning air. It greets you like a fellow conspirator. Even the pigeons are subdued. The street lamps flicker once, then release you. You begin walking, not in any direction, but towards something. You don't know what, but your feet do. And eventually, your eyes catch up. Ahead, at the edge of the neighborhood, you see something new. A door, standing free in the middle of a community garden that, until yesterday, held nothing but tomatoes and stubborn kale. Now a door. No frame, no building. Just the door. Wooden arched, painted a weathered green with curling vines, real or painted, you can't quite tell, winding around its surface. You approach slowly, and there, etched at the top in looping script, is a single word. Mneem. Not mnemosiny. Not memory. Just mneem, the Greek word for remembrance. You place your hand on the handle. It's warm. Not metaphorically. Actually warm. Like it's been waiting for you. You look back once. Your city is still there, still blinking slowly into day, still full of coffee cups and crossword puzzles and doorbells and socks that disappear in dryers. You smile. Then you open the door. You expect fanfare, or mist, or trumpets. What greets you instead is a hallway. Of course, always a hallway. But this one's different. It smells like cardamom and cedar. The light is soft, golden, not electric or fire, but something between sunlight and candlelight. The walls are made of stacked books. No shelves, just book upon book upon book, spines outward, titles visible if you care to read them. They stretch on endlessly, upward and sideways, and in curves that shouldn't be possible. You walk, slowly, reading titles as you pass. Some are familiar. The time you almost told the truth. How the wind sounds on Tuesdays. That one memory you swore was a dream but isn't. You pause. There's a book with your name on it. Not your surface name. Your real one. The old one. You reach for it. The book opens easily. No resistance, no puff of dust, no celestial choir. Just pages filled with moments. Not grand, just honest. Your first heartbreak. The first time you made someone laugh by accident. A time you cried alone and forgot why. A time you held someone's hand for too long and didn't apologize. You close the book gently. Place it back. You keep walking, and then there it is. A door at the end of the hall, smaller than you expected, painted the color of twilight. No handle, just a simple plaque that reads, "The room where forgotten things are thanked." You knock, it opens. Inside a single chair, a cup of tea still steaming, and a mirror. You sit. The tea smells like time and nostalgia. You sip. It tastes like your childhood bedtime stories. The mirror doesn't reflect your face. It reflects your story. In fragments, you see the archivist and the turtle and the swinging bench, and the fig and the woman in the pond, and the child with the painted stone. You see the benches you claimed. The loaf of brie. The shadow that winked from the laundromat. And you, always you, in each moment, present, choosing, witnessing, noticing. You whisper, "I remembered," and the mirror glows, then fades, and then you hear it. Not a voice, not music, just approval. As if the world itself is exhaling. The tea is gone. The chair still warm. You rise. Behind you, another door. No label. You walk through. And you're back. In your room. The scroll open. Your pen waiting. And your satchel heavier. You check inside. There's something new. A folded paper. On it in perfect looping handwriting. You've passed through 7 doors. The 8th is the one you write. You unfold it further. There's a blank page. You know what to do. You place the page beneath your scroll. A new chapter begins. You write, "Today I walked through a door made of remembrance, and I returned grateful." Then, there are places memory won't take you, but gratitude will. The candle flickers again. You leave it be. You write well into the morning. And when you stop, you don't close the scroll. You leave it open, inviting, just in case someone else walks in and needs to know. The door still exists. It always has. It always will. You wake not to an alarm, but to a soft breeze. Not the kind that rustles curtains or sends papers scattering, but the kind you feel before you hear it, like a whisper on the back of your neck, a shift in the air that carries the weight of something unspoken. Your window is closed. There is no fan running. Still, the breeze is there. You know what it means. Today is the day of your final return. Not to the surface world, you've never truly left that, but to the root of it all, to the underworld's quietest chamber, the one no myths dared name, the place where the stories not only end, but begin again. You pack your satchel for the last time in this journey. Every item now carries memory beyond its material. The black stone, smooth and cool, heavy with the silence of the eighth gate. The ink drop, still suspended like a tear not yet shed. The turtle-stamped stone, worn at the edges but always humming. The wooden comb, used only once, but enough. The bay leaves, brittle now, but still fragrant with devotion. The key, simple and iron, whose door hasn't revealed itself yet. You leave your scroll open on the desk, weighed gently by a mug. One page complete, the rest will come. Outside, the city is softer today. No one rushes, even the pigeons pause before crossing the road. You take a different route. Instinct guides your feet. Familiar alleys become unfamiliar. You recognize landmarks that don't exist. You step through what looks like a shadow cast by nothing and find yourself once more in the archive. But it's changed. It's quiet. Not just hushed, but listening. The archivist is there. The original one, with the cracked voice and the parchment-smelling sleeves. They smile. "We were wondering when you'd return," they say. "I had to find my name again," you reply. They nod. "Good, now it's time." They don't lead you. They simply step aside. And there, between two towering shelves of myths long discarded, is a passage. Narrow, dim, lit only by the glow of memory. You walk, not fast, but steady. The path slopes downward. You feel no fear, only gravity. The tunnel opens at last into a round room. Stone walls, moss carpet, a shallow pool in the center, lit from beneath with a soft blue glow. The pool of echoes, not Lethe, not Mnemosyne, older than both. This is the place where stories go to rest, not to be forgotten, but to echo gently through time. Across from the pool sits a figure, wrapped in gray. Their face is a blur, not obscured, just undefined, like a memory half remembered. They gesture for you to sit. You do. Between you, a scroll lies on a pedestal, blank. They speak not with words, but with presence. You understand instantly. This is your final lesson. You are not here to add to the story. You are here to listen to it echo. And so you do. At first, the echoes are soft. Footsteps on river stones. Pages turning in a forgotten bookshop. The turtles yawn. Then laughter, your own and not. Then a memory, you standing in the rain, shouting someone's name, but only hearing your own heartbeat in return. Then a lullaby, sung in a language you never learned, but always knew. Each sound is a ripple. Each ripple draws you closer. Finally, the figure speaks aloud. Do you understand now? You whisper, yes. Say it. And so you do. The underworld is not beneath us, it is what roots us. They nod and fade, not vanish, just dissolve into the echo. You rise, walk once around the pool, as if tracing the edge of your own understanding. Then leave, back through the passage, back past the archivist who bows, not to you but to what you now carry. You return to the world. Your city greets you with its usual strangeness. Crows argue on a telephone wire. A child tells a tree a secret. Someone on a bicycle hums the tune from your dream. You return home. Set the satchel down. Open the second scroll. Right. The journey was never about descent. It was always about depth. Then, I am not just the writer, I am the keeper, the listener, the echo. And finally, I have seen the eighth gate. It is a door shaped like trust. You close the scroll, not to end it, to rested, because stories like us need sleep. You place the scroll beside the first. The third remains untouched, not unread, just unwritten. You'll know when it's time. You sit on your bed. Look at your hands. They do not glow. They do not tremble. But they are yours. And they carry everything now. Every fig, every feather, every whisper, every weightless name. You dim the light. You let the candle burn low. And as the city hums its midnight lullaby, you lie back. Close your eyes. And remember, not with urgency, not with pain, but with the slow, steady rhythm of someone who knows. Nothing is ever truly lost, only echoed, forever. And now, as we return from our long journey, through myth, through memory, through the slow-turning corridors of the Greek underworld, let yourself breathe a little deeper. In through your nose, hold, and gently out. You've walked alongside forgotten gods and humble ghosts. You've wandered the archives where memories are kept like old stories whispered between leaves. You've met archivists and dreamt of turtles in sandals and heard lullabies echo across rivers you didn't know had names. And through it all, you noticed. You listened. You remembered. That's more than enough. So now, let everything you've seen soften into the background. Let the key rest. Let the scrolls quiet. Let the garden keep growing without your attention for a little while. Picture yourself on a bench, the one beside the pool, your satchel at your feet, your hands open in your lap, and above you the stars, not constellations, not maps, but memories blinking slowly. In rhythm with your breaths, you've earned your rest, and stories too need silence between the words. Let your breath slow, let your thoughts loosen like vines in a breeze. No more doors to open tonight, no more scrolls to write. Just peace, stillness, and sleep. Thank you for traveling this far with me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for remembering. Good night.